Hi, Franklin. Thanks so much for joining us at our session, Decolonize Today. For our audience who doesn't know you, you are the producer of Invasion, which is going to be the first film in our session. And you're also the founder of Submedia, which is a radical film collective that you left over the past year to start working on Invasion, the full-length feature film. So I'm really excited to get talking to you about this because I know that there's a lot of content in here and a lot of changes that have probably happened over the past year. So maybe just to start off, could you tell us a little bit about how you got involved in the project and as producer of the film?
Yeah, thanks, Jamil. About 10 years ago, I was touring with another feature film that I had made, and the members of the Unist'ot'en Camp, which is a house group within the Wet'suwet'en Nation, invited me to come to their territory to screen the film, but also to take part in an action camp, their first grassroots action camp, because at that time they had just moved into their territory out of their reserve, their federally mandated native reserve, to build a cabin and to, well, essentially decolonize, go through a process of decolonization, but also to block a number of oil and gas pipelines that will be crossing through their territory. And in the process, you know, being a filmmaker, I offered up my services. I mean, I said, you know, let's help you spread the word if you want, and they obliged. And I made a film called Oil Gateway that sort of laid out the situation. And what happened there is I began like what's now a decades-long relationship with the Wet'suwet'en, and I've created a number of different films to promote their struggle, including short films for Al Jazeera's AJ Plus. And while being on the territory for a number of years, I ran into Michael Toledano and Sam Vinyl. Michael Toledano is the director of one of they're both the co-directors of Invasion, and Michael Toledano is the director of the upcoming film, like feature-length film, Yinta, about the Wet'suwet'en. And so, yeah, we're still at it. We're still documenting, but our initial motivation for this was not essentially to make any feature films or short films for festivals, but to make what we call responses films. So it's basically films that we put out as things are happening to agitate, to tell people what's going on, and hopefully mobilize people to do solidarity actions, et cetera.
Yeah, that's great. And you bring up this point that it has been something that is decades, if not generations, in the making. And I remember earlier this year, there was quite a bit of momentum happening across colonial Canada, as it's called, that kind of condemned Trudeau and the RCMP's actions because there was a lot of violence being perpetuated against the Wet'suwet'en Nation. And also a lot of protests happening over the course of the year. And then obviously the coronavirus pandemic happened. Could you tell us maybe a little bit more about what the current situation is like now from your perspective?
Yeah, as you were saying, this past February was totally insane here in Canada. For people who just saw Invasion, the film basically leaves off right before what happened this year was, and it's very similar to what happened in Invasion. Police attacked a couple of checkpoints, arrested a bunch of people. But the difference this year is that Indigenous allies and other non-Indigenous allies took part in nationwide blockades of transportation infrastructure, essentially paralyzing the economy of Canada. This was like the story for a full solid month, front page news here in Canada, where ports were blockaded, railroad tracks, highways, and this just happened right before the coronavirus pandemic happened. But what basically went down was the Wet'suwet'en have been asking for forever to speak with the federal government and the provincial government and the pipeline company, and none of them would talk to them. And these actions that happened in February essentially forced the government to actually go to their territory and talk to them. And a memorandum of understanding started. This is not perfect; it's a first step, but we sort of realized that it was only direct action that actually got them to speak to the Wet'suwet'en. The pandemic hit, and the Coastal GasLink company just saw this as an excuse to go in full force, and they've been doing crazy damage to the territory, and they're slated to build a pipeline to start building the pipeline in these coming days. And then I think next week they will attempt to drill under the Wet'suwet'en River, this river that is featured in Invasion, which is one of the main parts that the Wet'suwet'en are trying to protect. It's a river. I don't know if anybody out there has ever drank water directly out of a river. It's very rare to be able to do that. And this is one of those rivers where you can do that. Just one tiny accident and this whole river could be ruined forever. And so in the coming days, we're keeping our eyes out. We have a couple of filmmakers, including the director of Gidimt'en, the next film, on the ground, capturing what's happening, to do responsive videos and to add to the feature length. But we're also asking people to keep an eye out so that they can support in whatever way they can, putting pressure on Canadian consulates around the world, taking part in direct actions, etc.
Yeah, that's great. I was going to ask you what kind of ways we can support, and I think that's really important to really put pressure on the government, on not only the Canadian government, but the international community to step in, because this is something that is happening across the globe, whether you're looking at the Amazonian Indigenous Nations or Western Canada. You know, there's constantly this violence and oppression that is being driven by the fossil fuel industry. So maybe on a kind of final note, can you tell us when we might be able to expect the full-length feature film, and tell us a little bit more about how that's going?
Well, hopefully next year. Coronavirus really messed up our plans for our fundraising efforts, and Invasion actually got into Hot Docs, which is a pretty big festival for documentaries here in Canada. And we had a whole strategy to go out there and knock and get some money. But right before the pandemic, we were able to go to a pitch session at the Big Sky Festival, and there we met folks from Neotero, who were the first folks to give us a good chunk of funding. So I'm starting editing actually this week. We have over almost 100 terabytes of footage to go through from the past decade. Wow. So I'll be editing for at least, I'm the editor of both films as well, and I'll be editing for the next 9 to 10 months. But hopefully by the end of 2021, we'll have a feature. But you know, I would always like to reiterate that the goal, the feature is more like a historical document. You know, we're really mostly concerned with the now. Right now, if the Wet'suwet'en don't win, we don't really have a story. We don't really have, I mean, it's a global issue. Like what the amount of carbon that they will be blocking by blocking these pipelines, they will be doing the world a huge favor. And so I just always like to stress that this is the focus shouldn't be. And all the accolades that we get from film festivals and whatnot, but that, you know, we supporting the Wet'suwet'en should be always the number one priority.
Well, we're really thankful to have your film showcased at our festival and to get this message out, because I think it is so critical for us moving forward. And I hope that we can stay in touch and hopefully hear more about the development of the film and keep our audience also informed on these developments, because I think we all need to start putting a lot of pressure on protecting the Wet'suwet'en Nation and their lands and their culture and their heritage, and preventing this from happening any further.
Can I say one final thing, if I may?
Of course, yeah.
And so when we made Invasion, it was also at the request of the Wet'suwet'en, and it was basically meant to show people what happens when a corporation is able to invade an indigenous territory. And we released it online for free last November, and there's been hundreds on screenings around the world. But the film is still out there for people to screen, and I use it as a fundraising tool for the Wet'suwet'en, but also as an awareness raising tool. And I don't know if you can flash the website on the screen at some point, but it's Unist'ot'en.camp/invasion, Unist'ot'en.camp/invasion, and it's got subtitles that are downloadable in multiple languages as well, with ready-to-print posters, screening materials, Q&A, discussion questions, etc. So use that resource, and yeah, and I think that's it. Thank you so much for giving me all this time.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us.
Awesome. Thank you, Jamil. Take care.
Cheers. Take care.